Subscribe to Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you. Boom.
Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today I'm going to show you how you can import and use loops inside of miRack for iPad. Let's get into this. Real quick, before we get started today, be sure and subscribe if you're into this kind of content. On this channel, I talk about everything from importing and using loops on modular synthesizers on iPad to making tracks for the iPad. We talk about sound design, we talk about old gear, we talk about new gear, all that good stuff. Be sure and subscribe. Thanks for joining me today, guys. Right off the jump, we're going to be working with the loops that we made in the video from yesterday, where we made a beat inside of and exported 4 different variations of that to use inside of miRack today. So if you missed that video, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to that up in the corner. Now you may be asking yourself, Dean, why are we worried about importing and using loops inside of miRack? I thought the whole point of modular synthesis was to get in here and build everything from scratch by hand inside of the app itself. Well, if you guys have been watching my channel for any amount of time at all, you know that I typically don't really go in for the, traditional rules of working with certain environments. And as a sample maker and as a loop maker, those are definitely a large part of my personal workflow. So we're definitely going to be exploring how to use those inside of miRack. Think of it this way. You might not be able to program every kind of sound in the world inside of this. Maybe you want a live flute loop or a live played piano loop inside of something that you're creating. Obviously, we're working with drum loops today and not melodic content, but I want you to keep in mind that the way that you use this and the kind of loops that you import into this, can have a really dramatic impact and free the limitations from what you can do inside of the app by itself. Okay, take 2. It is a lot harder to explain what you're doing than just to sit here and do it for yourself, guys. Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to need a way to play back the loops that we've created inside of First thing we're going to do is click the plus button, make sure that we're in the tag section, and we're going to need a clock module to set our tempo for today. If you remember, the loops that we made yesterday were at 125 beats per minute, so I'm going to go ahead and change our clocked module tempo to 125 beats per minute. Oh, whoops, come on. There we go. Fantastic. Now we're going to go ahead and insert a quad sampler. We'll make sure that we're in the tag section. We'll go down to the sampler page here, and we're going to insert a quad sampler into the mix. We're going to need a way to trigger these samples, so we'll go ahead and insert a sequencer at this time. I really am finding that the Seek 3x16 is pretty much perfect for this. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and route the clock 1 into the clock of our sequencer module. We're going to route the reset into the reset of our clocked module, of our sequencer module. And we're going to move the sampler a little bit closer, and we're going to go ahead and route the trigger in output of our first sequencer lane into the trigger input of our quad sampler, and we're going to make sure that one shot is highlighted here. You can see that as I click this button, it kind of puts a highlight on that. We're going to make sure that one shot is selected at this time. We'll go ahead and route the trigger output from our second lane into the trigger input of the second sample slot, and we'll make sure that we've highlighted one shot. We're going to take the trigger output from our third lane into our third sampler slot, and we'll make sure that one shot is highlighted. Here we're going to need another sequencer so we can trigger our fourth sample. I'm just going to double click here, choose manage, and choose duplicate. Let's bring this one down over here, and I'm going to choose the trigger output from the first sampler lane of the next sequencer here. We'll put trigger into trigger, and we'll make sure that one shot for all 4 samples is selected. We're going to go ahead and also take the clock for our second sequencer, put it into the clock input here of our clocked module, and we're going to take the reset and put that into the reset. Now, when I click the reset button on the clocked module, it will reset all of our sequencers and keep everything in time. We're going to need a way to hear our samples, so we'll go ahead and insert a mixer from the tag section. We'll go mixer. Which mixer you choose and how you route things is totally up to you. We'll just grab this mix 8 today, and I'll slide this over here and route the left out into the left in of our limiter and the right out of the right in to our limiter. I highly suggest that you use a limiter as the last thing before your master out, and that's going to help protect your ears, your headphones, and your speakers. Here's where you find this limiter inside of miRack, guys. If you go to limiter, for some reason it's not actually shown here, but if you go to the packs section and you go to bog audio, and here it is right here, limiter. So that's the one that I've been using. I highly recommend that you check out using a limiter as the last thing before your main audio out. Hi there. If you've been enjoying my videos, I'd like to encourage you to support the channel by maybe purchasing one of my sample packs over at Electronisounds.com, or maybe by becoming a patron over at Patreon.com for as little as $1 a month. The links are in the description. Thanks for watching. Let's go ahead and load the loops into our quad sampler here. I'll double click on the first slot and we'll choose Open Wave in slot 1. Here we'll need to navigate to the Audio Share Files folder and then the OM Recordings folder. Now we have a folder where we recorded our beat yesterday, Poison 202 beat, and I've labeled the different versions of our beat. We have a full version, a stripped version, a no snare version, and a no hats version. Let's go ahead and load that stripped version into slot 1. We'll double click on slot number 2. And maybe we'll load the no hats version there. We'll double click on slot number 3 and let's load the no snare version. And then on slot number 4, we'll go ahead and load the full version of our beat. Let's go ahead and set up some triggers to trigger these loops. What we'll need to do is address our clocked module right off the jump and make sure that our ratio is sending the correct timing to these sequencers that we want. We want a pretty slow tempo here because these are 8-bar loops. So if we look right off the jump, we can see that the playhead is moving quite a bit faster than we would like it to be moving. Let's go ahead and turn this ratio down to divided by 8. And what we'll do is we're going to put a trigger on the very first downbeat here, and that's going to trigger our first sample to play. Now when I hit the reset button, you'll see that it's actually starting the playhead moving across on our first sample here. I'm going to go ahead and bring the mix down on our mixer, and let's route this sample into the mixer. We're going to go ahead and route that into channel 1, and we're going to go ahead and take another from channel 2, and we're going to patch that right into the same as well. This is giving us a stereo routing of the sample. Now what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and put a trigger on the set of 4, and then a third trigger on the next set of 4. And what we'll do is, let's see here, we'll make sure that our clock is running, and it is, and I'll press the reset button, and I'll see it about adjusting this level for the camera. There's no direct sound today. It's really important that you guys hear what I'm saying. It's not so much important as the content that we're working with. Turn that down a little. Okay, and let's figure out what we need to do to get these other loops triggering in time. Okay, so what we need, in fact, it's already playing. All we need to do is route these to our mixer. So we're going to go ahead and route a left and a right, and then we're going to route a left and a right, and we're going to route a left and a right. This way we've got stereo output from each of the samples. We could go ahead and maybe pan these loops if we, not loops, but channels if we wanted to. Maybe 50% left and right on each one. You could hard pan these if you wanted to as well. But I find that maybe gets a little bit extreme width in the mix that we're not really after. And then let's go ahead and route trigger. Okay, cool. We'll put one here, and we'll reset everything. We're gonna go ahead and stomp, and then turn off the run. It's just gonna play through this loop real quick. And we'll get everything reset to start from the downbeat. Cool. So now, we should be playing through all 4 loops in sequence. Zoom in a little bit more. When this loop stops playing, we should be getting that trigger signal to start the second loop playing. And 2, and 1, 2, 3. Nope, not quite yet. Let's figure out why. Because I don't have the clock on run. That's great, Dean. Let's go ahead and hit reset again. And now, when this drum loop finishes playing, it should start playing the next drum loop. Two, 3, and now it's going to be scrolling through these loops in real time, guys. And what you can do is you can program some cool melodics over this, and you've got a drum variation happening the whole time without having to do all of that programming inside of the app itself. Keep in mind that we've got, different versions of these beats, and you could have created, more different versions of the beats to cycle through. You could have these beats be longer than 8 bars. These could be melodic, loops. They don't have to be drum loops. Now when we get to the end of this loop, it should trigger the first loop again. And 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we have it. We're now officially scrolling through all of these loops. And it's creating a variation in the drum pattern. One, 2, and 1, 2, 3. Here we go. It's as simple as that. I hope you guys have found this useful. And until next time, thanks for watching.